Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and I teach watercolor and sometimes gouache. And today we are doing a black lab. We have Michael here who's working the cameras. Thank you for being here.
Hello, you're welcome.
And we are going to be doing this project in 6 steps. So our very first step, we are going to paint in the dark values on our dog. Our second step, we will paint in the medium values. Here, 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 here. Third step, we will do our light values. Our fourth step, we will paint our eyes. Fifth step, we will do our nose and our mouth. And our sixth step is just any finishing details, tightening stuff up, highlights, you know, finishing off a painting. The supplies that I'm using a round 6 and a round 2. These are the Let's Make Art Classic series brushes. These are watercolor brushes. You can use watercolor brushes for gouache also. Just make sure you rinse them well when you're done with them. We are using Gouache. The brand we're using is Designer Holbein. I don't know if it's Holbein Designer or Designer Holbein. I don't know. It's Gouache from Holbein. It's great. Okay, the first color is permanent white. Our second color is ivory black. Our third color is carmine. Our fourth color is yellow, permanent yellow deep. And our last color is turquoise blue.
What is with the name permanent yellow deep? I've come across that so many times. Why did they call it permanent deep yellow or deep permanent yellow?
I don't know enough to answer that question.
My mic was off. I was asking, why do they call it permanent yellow deep?
I don't know enough about pigment, and I think that there's probably a process and it's based off of the pigments they use, because I know that there's also like a light or a medium or different things like that. So someone much smarter than me knows the answer to that.
I feel like the words are out of order.
I can't speak to this, my dear. I'm sorry.
All right.
And I can call him my dear because we're married.
Allegedly.
Ooh. Okay.
Someone suggested that we might be siblings.
I saw that. So we're going to do our outline, and then we'll do our oath, and then we will get to painting. So I have the outline taped to my paper. We're actually using a paper made by Legion. I don't believe it's sold in a pad. They like made this paper for us, which is wonderful. And Legion is a wonderful paper brand, so if you ever come across their stuff, I recommend them. Okay, I'm going to take my graphite paper and do it dark, shiny side down. And I'm going to take a pen and just start drawing. Now, the difference between gouache and watercolor, if you're not familiar, we have an entire video dedicated to talking about how they're similar, how they're different, how they kind of compare to watercolor and acrylic. But essentially, gouache is watercolor. It's just a more opaque watercolor. So it's kind of like if acrylic and watercolor had a baby. Now, because of that, you can make your outlines a little bit darker, because we will be utilizing gouache a little bit more on the opaque side, which means we won't be adding a ton of water to it. So we'll probably cover up all of these lines that we have going on here. I also just want to say, I'm realizing right now that on the outline I forgot to put in the other side of the mouth. It's not a big deal. I'm just gonna put it in right now. There, done. I always want you guys to utilize these outlines as guides. This is not a coloring sheet. If you differ from what's going on here from your painting, you're not doing it wrong. I just feel like there's so much joy in painting, and drawing is a really hard skill to learn. It's a valuable skill. I enjoy drawing, but I also don't want that to stop people from experiencing the joys of painting or of watercolor. I mean, that's why we provide these outlines for you, is because we still want you to paint, even if drawing is not necessarily a skill that you have. Although if being able to make your own work and really like come up with your own paintings and things like that is the end goal for you, I do suggest starting to learn the basics of drawing, because then that just gives you freedom, because then you can really do whatever it is that you want to do, and you might not have to worry about outlines. They're a great tool for learning. And I should probably check and make sure that this is transferring. I cannot tell you how many times I have put my graphite paper in upside down and traced an entire thing and then lifted it up and nothing was there, which is like such a bummer because this part is my least favorite part, right? Like I want to get to painting and it's like when you're ready to go, you see you have to trace it all over again.
You traced it to the back of the outline is what happened.
Yeah, yes I did. I think there's this one time where I was trying to do this really intricate illustration back in the day when I just had an Etsy shop of like the word love, and then it was all this filigree pattern around it. It was very detailed and involved, and I traced. That's when I put the graphite paper in upside down, and I thought I traced this entire filigree pattern. It seriously took like an hour, and I didn't think to lift up my paper and check it once, and then when I like took it off, there was nothing there, and I was devastated.
Valuable learning opportunity.
I think I had to like take a break and like eat a piece of chocolate because I lost it. And then I went back to it. And there are a lot of lines going on in this painting. So once you lift up your painting, it's really difficult to like tape it back down and line it up. So if there's a part that you forgot, I'm a huge advocate of just putting it in, eyeballing it. It's not a big deal. It's really helpful though, if that happens to you a lot and you're getting like mad about it, to trace with a colored ink, because then you can very clearly see what areas you've outlined and what areas you haven't outlined. Especially around the eyes. There is so much going on in those eyeballs. I also just want to put a disclaimer that this project is a little bit more difficult. So if it's your first time with gouache ever, I would say maybe look at our beginner videos where we go over some techniques, maybe try to do some loose illustrations and stuff first. Just get more familiar with it before attempting this project. If you're still here and this is still your first time painting and using gouache and you didn't listen to me, I like you. And you're a rebel. And we're just doing this, you know what I mean? All right, if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you. That was a great ding.
Thank you.
I love to start that way because gosh darn, we are so hard on ourselves, and especially with some things, we have it in our mind that we should just be like good at it straight out the gate. And when we're not, we're like, oh, I just am not made for this. And it's not true. It's a skill. Practice. Take time. And you can't judge yourself along the way because everybody's different and learns at different speeds and have been painting different times and all of those things. So you can't compare your work. It takes out the joy, you know? All right. Before we get started into step one, I just want to say that with this dog gouache box, I focused on approaching each project a different way. So like the Corgi, I approached it more like watercolor, where we didn't really focus on opacity. With the German Shepherd, we did an underpainting and used watercolor and then like more opaque layers on top of that, so it was building up. This one is a different way where I'm not doing an underpainting. I'm just going straight for it. And I will be utilizing my paints more on the opaque side than the transparent side. So I'm not going to be using as much water, and I'm just like going for it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Totally.
All right. So I'm going to grab black because I'm starting by putting in my dark values first. So this is where you're going to look at your dog, and you can also refer to your step-by-step sheet as well and follow along there. And I'm going to start putting in where there are the darkest values that I have on my painting. So that's going to be by the ear, the neck. We have some around the eyes, above and below. We have here on the sides of the mouth and this ear over here, okay? And I'm going to leave that there so you guys can refer to that as well. Hopefully you have your own copy so you can see that pretty clearly. I'm using my round 6. And I'm just starting to put in the black.
This project is very dear to me because when I was a wee lad, like coming of age when little boys just loved dogs, my grandparents had a black lab named Hoffman. And I was over there all the time, and I don't know, now just when I think of a dog, I just think of a black lab. It like was my foundation for dogs.
What was Hoffman's disposition like?
Hoffman was just a buddy.
Yeah?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like chill?
He was very intelligent, but all he wanted to do was just like sit by you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he knew how to open the fridge and how to open the sliding glass door, and he would bring you a cookie if you said cookie.
He would bring you a cookie?
I mean, it was gross. It was all slobbered on, but
And he wouldn't eat it?
He was my grandpa used him as a bird dog, so he was like pretty trained as a birding dog.
What is a bird dog?
When you hunt birds, the problem is they're usually flying when you shoot them, and they land very far away. So a bird dog accomplishes 2 tasks. It will run out into the place where the birds are to scare them up. And when you shoot them and they like flap away and they perish, the dog will go retrieve them for you and bring it back.
Oh, I see. So he was just a highly trained animal.
Yeah, he was the best. Also, he had kids. They bred him once, and then they kept one of the puppies. And when Hoffman died, they had Tucker after that.
Aww.
So it was like 2 generations. And I also love Tucker dearly.
Was Tucker similar to his father, like same disposition?
No.
What was he like?
Tucker was a goofball, and he was, I'm not kidding you, he probably weighed 130 pounds. He was huge. He was the biggest lab I've ever seen. He was just like a blocky goofball, and they tried to teach him how to be a bird dog. He didn't have any interest in that.
He's like, nah. He's just frolicking in the field.
He loved babies. He would just lay his head on babies. My aunt had just had Amanda, and he just loved babies. Dogs are the best, man. Dogs are all the best.
Dogs. We don't deserve dogs, you know? Okay. I put in my dark values. Now, I just want to say and call attention to, I don't want you to stress about this part because we can always, this is the beauty of gouache, my friends, and this is why I love it so much. We can always layer. So let's say you painted an area and you were like, oh, I didn't mean to paint that area black. Well, let it dry, mix some other color and paint over it, and it will completely cover that black. It's way more forgiving. It allows you a little bit of freedom to try new things, because if you don't like it, you can always go back in and do another layer on top of it, okay? So I just want to alleviate that pressure that you're putting on yourself, that there are multiple chances. And even if you get to a point where you're just like, there is no saving this painting, which we all get there. I get those too. It's a piece of paper. Throw the piece of paper away, start again when you feel like it. It's not the end of the world, you know? Okay, now we're gonna get to the areas that get tricky with black animals, and this is why I'm excited to do this project for you, because when you paint black dogs or cats or whatever, our brain has a really hard time understanding the different values going on because our brain is registering that animal as black. And we're like, well, it's black. The whole thing's black. Do I just paint the whole thing black? You have to tell your brain to like, thank you for working so hard, but please leave me alone right now. And really look at the values that is happening on the animal. Because even though this is a black animal, I actually mostly painted this animal with a blue-gray color because when light hits black, it makes it a lighter value. And that is how we can tell that there's form. There has to be light always, or else there's no three-dimensionality to an animal. So I want you to pay attention to, we have different values. Now for me, I love to also adjust values by hue, which is by color, instead of just value. So that's why I'm introducing blue into the picture. So it's making it more like a blue-gray instead of just a gray, because I feel like that adds a color richness. You can utilize it just using white, just using black and white and adjusting the values from there, but your painting an animal is going to feel a little bit more flat. Because if you look at colors, even with grays, there's undercolors underneath. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to mix a medium value. So I'm going to take some black and I'm going to introduce some blue.
If I've learned anything in these last few tutorials, it's that no color is actually what it looks like.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but taking the time to actually look at colors and really just for what the color is and not what your brain is telling you it is, hugely, like, so valuable, so valuable. It could even be helpful if you were to, like, if you had swatches of, like, I know that even Pantone even sells like an entire swatch book of all of these different colors, or you can even swatch the paints that you have and, like, just go around and hold up those swatches to things around you, because then you can get a better understanding of how what you're painting feels like, communicating those realistic colors if you want. The other amazing thing about art is you can make anything, any color you want, because you're the creator of your world. So much freedom.
I love that little GIF or GIF, if you're one of those people, that makes its way around Facebook occasionally, where it's like the orange square with a white background, and then, like, when it changes to like a black background, it doesn't look orange at all, but it's like always the same color. It's just what context it's in. It's
amazing. The things surrounding it colors is informed by what's around it as well to get the overall feel. Okay, so I have black, I have blue, I have a little bit of white. So it's almost like this, I don't know, like slate color almost, or like a blue gray.
Slate navy.
Slate navy.
Slavey.
Okay, and now I'm going to start putting in my medium value. So I'm just going to be connecting like these black areas with each other. And if you want to add a little bit of water just to make this paint like smooth out and even out, you absolutely can. I just want you to pay attention to, and I'll show you right here, if I add too much water, I want you to just pay attention to the levels of opacity here, because sometimes that can make a painting feel disjointed, where if in one section it feels really watered down, in another section it feels really thick. It's not bad, but just keep in mind. I also want you to notice that as I'm like where I'm meeting the shadowed areas and where I'm putting in the medium values, and this is another reason why I love gouache, is it reconstitutes. So I'm kind of like working the areas where they meet and blending, and those colors will move because you're using water to bring them back up. Acrylic does not do that, if I remember correctly, but if I'm being honest, I don't use acrylic a ton. But I believe that, well, I know that once acrylic is dry, it's dry. So
I have two things. One, you should totally pull that right sleeve up. I feel like it's not long for this world.
Thank you.
Thank you. And two, I know I mentioned this recently, but it helped me a ton, and I know that some of you watching might be newbies. Why don't you tell us why you aren't just painting straight lines across that face, Sarah?
Oh, yes, that's a great call out. The reason why I'm not painting straight lines across this face is because the direction of your brushstroke actually will be an indicator to your viewer of the form of what you're painting. So I know that sounds silly, but if we were to just go in here and do this, up and down, don't do this. If we were to do this, do you see how that like flattens this nose? Like the brush strokes alone, because it's just this horizontal line, totally flattened it. Where, well, I could just paint over it. By following the shape of the form that we're painting, going back, following the direction of the form, it gives our viewers more information and more evidence that there is shape and form to this instead of painting it flat. I kind of skipped ahead to the light value there. Excuse me, I just got excited about what I was doing. Now, something that I do to help me like at this stage is like I know that like the front of the mouth and the forehead, top of the head, and the top of the nose is a light value. That's step 3 and we haven't gotten there yet. So sometimes what I'll do is, especially with gouache, is I'll just use water to like blend out areas just so I'm starting to fill in that space. And then I'll just do the light value on top. Because sometimes it's like confusing of like, do I put this paint color in now or do I not? And this is why I really like gouache, is because it doesn't totally matter. So I'm just gonna use water to start putting in those light values so it's not just like this barren white chunk space. And also I just want to say at this painting, please don't judge at this stage in your painting. We have not been working on this enough or put in enough information for it to actually be something yet. So like, be nice to your painting, okay? Because right now this dog is looking funky.
I just looked up if, how do I say this? Your canine teeth, you know what I'm talking about? Your pointy teeth? I was wondering if they named the species after those teeth because the species has them, or if they named the teeth after the animal.
Yeah?
I think they named the teeth after the animal. I think they're like, dogs have those pointy teeth, like eye teeth. We'll call our teeth canine teeth.
So they named them after the animal is what you said?
Canine, the name for the dog, for the family came first.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's interesting. If you could rename your canine teeth, what would you name it?
Vampire teeth.
Vampire teeth. Dracula.
Or just...
I like
the
that
dentist
better.
is like, look, your molars are coming in nice, your front teeth, and your teeth they're looking great.
We got to remove your tooth.
You got to do that with your hands every time, too.
Yeah. Okay. I also need to put in some shadows on my ear. So I'm going to mix, it's not the darkest value, it's also not like a totally medium value. Like the shadows part is kind of in between. I'll put that in. Again, take a breath. Don't be mean to your painting, okay? And I realized that I didn't put the shadows in on the body, so I'm going to do that really quick. I'm going to go underneath this kind of, like you could tell that, you know how like dogs have like directions of tufts of hair, and under the neck I feel like there's always like a little bit more where it kind of like flicks out. Sometimes the collar is here too. So I'm going to put that in. Now the body, I will say that when I paint animals, I really, I pay attention to how detailed I want to be where. And I really want the focus to be on the face and the head. I don't want to spend too much time on this body. So when that happens, I really allow myself to just paint loose. Paint loose, use water. Do we still want different values and hues? Yes, but does it need to be exact? Not really. You really just want to pay attention to that this right side is where the highlight is going to be. So your darker values are going to be right underneath like the head and maybe on the left side. And then it turns to medium values, and then it's going to be lighter values on this side.
It's so funny, and I say it all the time, it's the power of actually telling people things, because I'm married to you, and I've seen this thing before, and I never would have known that you didn't spend more time on the body portion until you just told me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
My brain just goes like, oh, this is all great. This is all detailed. She paid a lot of attention to all of it.
And that's why I love brains sometimes. They make it tricky to when you're painting, but they're actually super helpful for like as an artist, because of that, what Michael was just describing. He saw the face, he knew it was a black dog. His brain made an assumption and didn't want to spend a lot of time being like, is everything perfectly detailed and rendered? Our brain doesn't do that. It can if you force it to, but that's not the automatic response. We do that as the artists, and sometimes we get so lost in it that it makes it really frustrating. And so for me, I'm just like, I'm not going to waste my energy on this part if I know that that's really not the part I want people to focus on anyway, you know?
I just think it's like second nature for people to like cover their bases. When you're showing someone a piece of art, there's a place you're insecure about or like you didn't spend more time on. It's in you to go like, oh, well, you know, that part I did quick. Like you want to mention it. Mm-hmm. But in reality, if you don't,
they don't know.
It's so much better because no one has any idea.
Yeah. And then the heartbreaking scenario when you're like super proud of a painting and you show someone and they're like, what's going on there? And you're like, That happens to me too.
Just me.
Just like,
what is this?
He's like, I can't tell what this is at all. Okay. I'm going to put in kind of like the medium value for this tuft of hair here that's kind of flipping out. Notice my brush strokes. Notice I'm following that kind of shape.
Hey, do black labs have black flesh? Like if you shaved a black lab, are they black underneath?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Harvey's a black dog and he's like white underneath.
He's also older.
I mean, I don't think his skin would change color.
Somebody let me know. A vet. Someone who has had to maybe shave a section of black hair from a dog before.
Yeah, are they black under there?
Okay, now we're gonna mix our lighter value. So I'm gonna take that same kind of blue-gray color and just add more white to it. And maybe add a little bit more blue to it, depending on how like vibrant you wanna be. You just wanna make sure that overall it communicates at a lighter value. So don't use pure blue because the blue itself won't be a lighter value than the medium value that we put down, most likely. It will probably appear similar, if I had to guess. I'm not sure though, because I didn't do it. Okay, so I mix more white into it. And we don't want to go too white. You just want to make sure it's a lighter value. And then we're going to start putting in that color. Okay. Now it should, if you use water to like blend, it should kind of match the value that you like blended with water, except it's opaque. So it's like thicker. So I'm going at the top of the head. And then there are going to be times where we're going to go even lighter. So I'm mixing more water into it. And like right at the top, I'm putting in an even whiter color. Beginning of this nose.
I was wondering why I felt off today. The garbage truck hasn't come.
You're like, something's different. What is it?
Any reason that you didn't do the eyes first on this one?
No.
Okay.
No particular reason. You guys can do eyes first. I just want to call attention to something before I finish the eyes conversation. I want to call attention to the fact that the space between the eyes, that bridge, is on a different plane than the tip of the nose. So you need to make sure that in between the eyes is a slightly darker value than what is on the very tip of the nose to communicate that it's farther away in space on a different plane. If it's the same value as this nose, front and like tip of the nose and the mouth, then visually it's gonna make it come forward, which is then going to flatten your dog.
Like a pug.
Yeah. And I think really that is the struggle with painting dogs specifically, is because they have a muzzle and it comes out. And if you don't communicate that depth, then it's going to feel flat. That's just going to throw you off.
For all you people who are curious why Sarah looked at me and said muzzle weird, is because last tutorial she kept calling it a nozzle.
I didn't keep going. I did it once. One time.
We're going to go ahead and paint the nozzle? Like, what are you talking about?
You're like, did you just say nozzle? Okay.
I'm so surprised how much blue is in this dog.
Yes, it's a lot of blue. And I'm going to start putting in the light value on the top. Now, I just want to call attention to the fact this is still a very loose, rough painting. We're going to go in and do some finessing before we move on to the eyes and the mouth. So like basically we establish our values and where they take place. Our values and our hue we established. Now we're going to go back in and blend and do layers on top of it so the transitions feel more smooth and all of that fun stuff. So this is again why I really like gouache, because I kind of like chunked things in like a coloring book where I blocked it off. And now I want you to go in and start blending. So like this black shadow underneath the eye, it's going to connect to the ear, and we're just going to like blend. And there should be enough paint there from these layers that it won't lighten up your painting too much. So I'm really just like kind of smoothing things out, letting things transition. If you're trying to blend and you notice that you're just not getting the color or the value that you want, you can absolutely pick up more paint. So let's say like, oh, there's a really dark shadow that goes over here, and I can't like, I need it to, that dark value to go out more. You can pick up more of that mix that you have here and put it in.
Do you have a foundational dog in your life?
A foundational dog. Like just...
When you think of the word dog, you like picture that dog. You just like... It was your introduction to dogs.
So, my very first dog that I can like really remember was a Rottweiler, and his name was Samson. And he was so sweet. He was so big. And I just remember like my friends being a little bit scared of him because of how big, and he had this bark, and every time, you know.
He had the deepest voice I've ever heard.
He had the deepest bark, but man, he was so sweet. And I remember one time I was in junior high, I came home with my friend from school, and he lived in like the downstairs bathroom with like a gate that opened up to the garage, so he had all the room in the garage, his food, but he was still like in the house, so it's like a both scenario. And one time it was a baby gate that kept him in, and my friend came in and he knocked the gate down because he was so excited to see her, and he like ran to her to kiss her, and
Who
she
was
was
it?
Lisa.
Okay.
And she was so scared because this big dog was coming at her, but when he got to her, he just was licking her all over. And that's just what I think of when I think of like, especially like big dogs. I just think of like sweet. I mean, and he would try and sit on your lap.
He was huge.
He was huge.
I remember trying to pick him up. In case you're not putting two and two together, I've known Sarah for a long time.
Yeah.
But I remember when I got my driver's license and I drove to your house and I wanted to take him on a ride in my truck. And I was trying to like lift him into the bed of my truck, which is a tiny little Ford Ranger, by the way. It's a low to the ground. I could not lift that dude up. He was big.
He was just sweet. Okay, so if you're like, okay, Sarah, what are you working on? What are you doing? I'm just going through and blending through these values. Where these sections meet, where the shadows meet the medium values, meet the light values. I'm just blending it with a damp brush, blending it out. I'm also looking at my reference photo and following where I do see value changes. So I'm focusing a lot right here on like the side of the face and the eye. This is kind of, it already starts to feel like this feels more smooth and natural to me than this section over here, right? Because I haven't gone there. And if you're wondering like, why are there these different values in different places? So this side right here as a whole is going to be a darker value because it's the side of the head, which means it's moving away from us. And when things move away from us in space on a form, and if the light is like up front and things are moving away, it turns into a darker value. Also, it's super dark underneath the ear because the ear is casting a shadow itself. So we're playing with a few different things. We're playing with the side of the head, the ear is casting a shadow, and then we're also dealing with the actual composition of a skull, which means there's going to be a darker like value around the eyes to account for the socket of the eye. And there's a highlight on the brow bone the same way that we have a brow. And it sticks out, which means the light is going to hit that, which makes it a lighter value. That's how we communicate that something is sticking out, is how the light is going to hit it more than something that's far away. Does that make any sense?
Makes total sense.
Some sense?
I notice you're washing and drying your brush between areas. This is just so you don't accidentally get like too dark of a blend. Yeah.
So as you keep on blending, you'll be picking up paint.
Okay.
So because if I keep blending without like picking up paint, and if I don't rinse my brush in between sections, then eventually all these values will even out.
Homogenize.
Homogenize. That's a great word. Okay, so now I'm blending like the nose here. See that I'm following kind of the slope upward with my brush, and then as it gets to the side, that's where it starts to kind of curve. We got to put like more of a medium value on that side. Okay. And then I need to put even, I think I just want to go a little bit darker in between here. And blend that up to the top of the head where it turns into a light value. And this is where it's really like, I think there's different ways to learn how to like paint and draw like things or people, and one of them is just like going off of like the basics of form and standard like ratios of form, but I was kind of more taught to paint just what I see. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So going off of a reference photo or a still life or things like that, instead of like just being like, okay, a dog's skull is this way. Now, I say that because if you're going off of your own reference photo, the lighting informs everything on form and on how you render it. So I'm telling you these like rules of how like to bring things forward and push things back. But if you have a reference photo that's telling you something different, you follow that reference photo, because the lighting, if the lighting is coming from behind, then everything I just said to you is like not accurate anymore, or if the lighting is coming from underneath, or if it's strong lighting on top. So pay attention to where your light sources are, because that will actually inform your painting a lot. Okay, now you can see that it's starting to smooth out. The other thing that I kind of want to call attention to before we move on is being an artist or creating something, you see all of the stages. You see the beginning where it's looking funky. And because of that, we sometimes have that in our mind as we continue on a painting, which makes it really difficult for us to see what it is instead of like what's in our mind. Does that make sense? It's almost like, you know how you have friends for a really long time, or like your parents or something, and when you think of them, you have a visual of who they are in your memory, but then if you were to like step back and be like, whoa, or like it works for ourselves, right? We have a vision of what we look like, or our hands, and then we look down at our hands and they're like different than what we remember. It's the same for a painting. So you have to like acknowledge that and allow yourself to step back from your painting and see it with fresh eyes to get past the awkward stage that we first started with. That's why it's really important to be able to step away from a painting. Does that make sense?
Or pause. Thank you. Thank you.
You'll be here all tutorial. That was really funny. Okay. I'm starting to feel better about the overall form of my dog. I think what's still throwing me off is I still feel like this is appearing flat. which indicates to me that I need to do more value on it. Value transitions, or introduce different values or more values. So I'm going to take more of a white and kind of like touch up right at the tip. Okay. And then I'm going to go back on like the top and in the middle and do kind of like a darker gray. And then the nice thing too, that I just want to call attention to, is just like, we're painting this animal, we've been using lots of blues and grays, which I know it's the same thing. It's going to be difficult for us to see this as a dark animal because we know how much like gray and blue we used. But if you're ever feeling like you're just like, I see what you're saying, Sarah, but it still is reading too blue, it's still reading too gray, I want it to be more black, you can always do another layer. As long as you're matching the values and not messing with the values, you can change the hue. And it's really helpful with gouache because you could actually water down the black. So it's almost just like a black wash to maybe put over some areas to take out some of that blue and gray if it's reading too much. Yours might not be, or you might be like, I actually kind of like that.
Memory is so funny. I have to think of mnemonic devices to remember my own children's birthdays, but like watching you paint this dog, I can remember the feel of like that little cave in between Tucker's eyes. You know what I mean? There's like a little bump inside. I can feel what he felt like, and it's been 20 years. Yeah,
and I always feel like if you're painting an animal, or like if you have a dog at home, seriously, feel their structure, feel their face, feel the softness of their ears.
And call him a good boy.
And call him a good boy. Maybe give him a treat.
Yeah.
But like, for me, I always kind of rub my dog's brow or like in between.
Yeah.
Always. And so like, I can feel that like bump. And it's the same on like that ridge, like a little bit of a highlight right on that ridge. Or like the velvety of their ears, you know, how soft their ears are.
We're getting another puppy.
Next time you see us, we're gonna have another black lab, or a black lab. We have not owned one of those.
Again, this goes back to, if you watch the German Shepherd already, it's the hair, man. Black labs are little hair factories. Their hair shows up on everything.
Yeah.
Our dog is black, but I keep him shaved so he doesn't shed. He's also tiny, so it's a lot easier.
Yeah, he's a tiny little fella. I also have a tendency to kind of like, when I don't paint in eyes, I kind of just avoid the eyelid as well. That's just how I am. So if you have like sections around your eyes, don't stress. We just haven't gotten there yet. There's a little bit of a shadow underneath the nose, and actually right at the top. It's just a slightly darker value right at that ridge on the bottom here. Okay, I'm getting to the point where I've been doing a lot of like finessing or finagling, depending on you know, if what kind of mood you're in. I feel like finessing if you're like feeling good about it, finagling if you're feeling frustrated. And is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm getting to a place where I maybe need to step back from everything that I've done and focus on something else. So then when I come back to it to do more adjusting or do anything else, I have fresh eyes and I can kind of have a better understanding of what's going on. Still kind of just blending that left-hand side though. Okay. Let's move on to the mouth, the tongue. So I have red here, or carmine, I guess the color is. But tongues are actually more like a pink colored. So I'm going to take red and I'm going to introduce just a tiniest bit of yellow just for a little bit of warmth. And then I'm going to introduce a little bit of black to kind of desaturate my red, to like gray it. And then a little bit of white. And you should get like this like red purpley color. Can they see that mixing?
Totally.
Okay. So I'm going to take this color and I'm just going to paint the entire thing. Now I put in that color, I feel like it's just a little too gray. I want to, so I grabbed a tiny bit more red into that mixture. And then I am using water to kind of spread this out because I feel like the color that you get when you add a little bit of water to it actually goes really nicely with the color of a tongue. It lends itself, I feel.
It's funny because you're used to a dog's tongue hanging out, but how weird is it that their tongue's hanging out, you know?
Yeah. Okay, and then how we can communicate that this is coming out from somewhere, like from their mouth and within, like their body, it's hanging out. It's got to be a dark value at where it's coming out. So we're going to mix like a dark, like red purple.
Purple.
That's it. That's the color.
They need to hire me at the paint factory.
They
for
do.
Color naming.
You're like mix, change, put deep first when you do permanent yellow deep.
Permanent deep yellow. Deep permanent yellow. Both are good alternatives.
So I did dark red and then I'm kind of using water similar to what I would do in watercolor to just like blend it out to get a lighter value. Okay, I still don't feel like that's dark enough, so I'm going to do another run. Grab a little bit more black right at the tip, right where it's coming out. That feels better. It's starting to get there. And then their tongues are pretty like floppy. They're long, right? And they have like a split in the middle of their tongue. You know what I mean? It folds.
It's called bilateral symmetry.
Really?
Yeah.
So because we have to account for that, we need to put in a little bit of like, ooh, I got black on my brush. Hold on, let me rinse that out. That's fine. Just lift.
Yeah, when your body forms in utero, it forms in mirror images. It's called bilateral symmetry. Other animals like starfish and stuff display different forms of symmetry.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I need to make a new pile of white because my white turned into like a black gray. And I keep putting that in with my red mixture and it's throwing me off, so I'm going to just grab more white. And then like on the right hand side, I'm going to mix this white with my like pink to still get a light value, but it has a little bit more opacity to it. Just doing a little bit more of a pink in between here. And what I was saying about the split tongue is we kind of have to account for that little split a little bit and make one side a little bit darker value. So the left-hand side of this tongue right here is a darker value than the right-hand side. Do you see that?
Yep.
But again, pay attention to your transitions. We don't want this to feel chunky. And as your painting dries, you might be like, oh, I actually need to do another run. And that's the thing about gouache is it dries really matte. It has this like chalky finish to it, which I actually really love. But because of that, your dark values tend to dry lighter. So when you're putting paint in, it seems really dark. As they dry, they lighten up.
I saw something funny. I don't know if I'll translate it well, but it said if a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, and then there's a bunch of space, and you scrolled and it said 500 miles away, a chihuahua will bark at it.
That's my dog. He's not a chihuahua, but he hears things that I cannot hear and lets me know that he can hear them by barking. Oh my gosh, the worst is when it's windy.
Oh my gosh. The worst is when you step right outside and then you shut the door and then you come back in and he's like, you're a stranger. You're like, I just went outside. The whole
You're like, Harvey, how do you not know me by now? You've been my dog for 10 years. Do you not know me? Okay, so now I'm feeling good about my form. I got a good transition shadow. It's nice and dark right as it's exiting the mouth at the top. It transitions to a lighter value. My right-hand side is a little bit more highlighted. And then I'm gonna go in just with white and just do a little bit of a glare because tongues are wet.
Drooly.
So there's some moisture to them, and we communicate moisture through glares.
How gross is dog breath?
Except puppy breath.
Yeah, puppy breath's cute. Except puppies have razor teeth.
Yeah, they do. They really do. Okay, I feel good about my tongue, and now we're gonna use that same like purpley red mixture to do their gums. And again, I'm not doing a lot of detail here because I don't wanna go too crazy, and honestly, dogs' mouths are really like complicated. There's a lot of like folds and things going on where you're like, okay, are those gums?
And bumps, there's weird bumps.
There's bumps. Yeah, and so I just try to simplify it by doing kind of more just purple gums, like pink purple gums with a little bit of a highlight. And then I'm gonna paint, this is the jaw, the bottom of the jaw here. Okay. But remember, right as it's meeting where it's coming out of the mouth, you gotta have a darker value in there to show that it keeps on going in around and it's coming out of something. Okay. And the teeth, I don't want to leave my teeth just like white because very rarely is teeth actually white. It's like creams most of the time.
Ivory, if you will.
Ivory, thank you.
Enamel.
So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, just a tiny bit, and a tiny bit of gray, and a tiny bit of white. I'm going to paint in my teeth. And this top one, it's coming out of the mouth, so the mouth is casting a shadow on it. And the gums are like around the teeth, it's actually black, or like a darker value.
Is it really?
Well,
on that picture.
On the reference photo I was looking at, yeah. It could have just been the shadow was so strong from the light source that it's actually like pink and it's appearing black because of the value.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like the black labs I've had contact with had like black dots in their mouth too, like it wasn't.
They do. Yeah, it's along here. But I didn't put that in because I'm like, that's a lot of thing to try and communicate when maybe people don't even know that they do. Just trying to simplify it.
My golden retriever growing up had that too. Even though she was like just pure golden, she had black in her mouth also.
I'm going to switch to my 2 so I can get in there a little bit more precise when it comes to my teeth. And if you're just like, this is gray, add some red in there.
Do you remember that dog at all? A 3-legged golden retriever?
Oh yeah, Lady. I remember Lady. She was sweet.
She was low-key.
She was low-key. I just remember her chilling in your yard all the time.
Yeah. She'd lay in my mom's woolly time beds and make my mom mad. There'd be these big flat spots where Lady was laying. She just liked to smell good.
I get that. I just want to smell good too. Okay. And I'm going to go back in and grab just black and kind of like redefine the edge of this mouth here a little bit.
You ever been bit by a dog?
I don't think so. I've been bit by a horse, but not a dog.
I got bit in the face when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, bad.
That's scary.
Yeah, it was all cut and stuff. But you know what? I still love dogs.
They're so good. Okay, okay. Okay, I'm gonna leave that for a second and then come back to it in a minute. Again, it's the same thing of I've been working too hard and staring at one area for too long. Let's take a step back, move on to another area, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. We're gonna move on to the nose. Now, when you're looking at the nose, you want the nostrils to be the darkest part because those are holes that go into the body. And then actually the tip of this nose is gonna be a darker value, and then it's gonna get a lighter value on the top and the bottom. So I'm gonna use my 2. I'm gonna grab black. And just on the very inside is going to be that darkest value. You can see on the outline here that I kind of showed that there's a transition. And then I'm just going to take water and kind of like blend that to a lighter value. If you want to use gray, like use your white paint instead, you can. Sometimes though, I mean, this is why I like gouache and why I like watercolor, because I love that water just blends to a lighter value for me. It saves me time. And then I'm going to take like an almost black and follow this front of the nose here. Like so. And at this point, your dog still looks weird, okay? It's not coming together yet. It's not supposed to yet. We're not there. Once we put in the eyes and then start like going back and tightening other stuff, that is when it comes together, not before. Okay, I'm taking black. I'm gonna mix a lighter value. And the top is also a lighter value. And this just takes some patience, going back in, blending things out. adjusting the values, doing layers. And this is why this project is kind of difficult, because you really have to be paying attention to the value transitions on this form and kind of mimicking what you're seeing. And that's a skill. It's a skill that takes time. I'm not saying that you guys can't get there if you're not there. All I'm saying is it actually is something you have to practice. Being able to recognize, one, what you're seeing, and then two, match what you're doing to what you're seeing is something that does take practice and take time to develop. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. Like, be kind to yourself. Recognize that this is something that people spent a lot of time doing. I mean, that's really what art school is about for a lot of things, is first seeing and then trying to render what you see enough so that people actually believe it and can tell what's going on, which is a win. Sometimes I just think if people can just like tell that this is a dog, I did my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not a giraffe. It's all right.
That's also why I really love painting animals that have such strong characteristics, because if like a pink bird, you're like flamingo. Animal with a really long neck, giraffe. Elephant with the trunk, elephant. Like, you can get away with so much because they have such strong characteristics.
I have so many dog facts for you.
Dog fact away.
This is from the American Kennel Club, so they have to be true.
Okay.
A dog's nose print is unique like a fingerprint.
What?
Yeah. Cool, huh?
That is so cool.
Let's see. 70% of people sign their dog's name on the holiday card.
70% of people do?
Yeah.
That's so cute.
That's cute.
We don't do holiday cards.
I mean, everyone knows that a dog's nose is great, but they have 300 million receptors where a human has 5 million.
Whoa, in their nose?
Yeah.
Whoa.
In general, the shape of a dog's face suggests its longevity. A long face, in general, means a longer life.
Really? Like its age, or that it will have a longer life?
That it will have a longer life.
Okay, interesting.
Where is this other one? Yawning is contagious, as you well know, and even around dogs.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cute.
Let's see. Human blood pressure goes down when petting a dog. Also, the dog's does as well.
You know, that's actually why I did that. That's not the reason, but April, it's National Eye Seeing Dog. There's like National Eye Seeing Dog Day in April. And
Seeing eye dog.
Seeing eye dog. And the most common breeds for seeing eye dogs are Black Labs and German Shepherds.
Huh.
So that's why I went with painting these two. I wanted to celebrate
Cute.
how amazing they are.
Dogs only have 1,700 taste buds, where humans have between 2,000 and 10,000. So we have more taste buds.
Okay. No wonder they like my cooking. But I'm
Puppies are all born deaf.
Oh, I did not know that.
Dogs are not colorblind. They see blue and yellow.
Okay. So then does that mean they also see green?
I don't know. Probably. Or like some form of it.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's the end of the American Kennel Club fun facts.
Those were great.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Our dog nose should feel like it has form now. It's sticking out. We got tons of different values going on there. I'm going to do a little bit. I'm going to define this nostril with a little bit of a highlight.
Three dogs survived the Titanic.
How did they do that? They were in freezing water.
Probably got on a boat. A bloodhound's sense of smell is usable as evidence in court.
Whoa, that's cool. Okay, I did the nose. I'm stepping away from the nose. Let's do the eyes, and then we'll get back into this dog. So around the eyelids, it's actually like a lighter value. So I'm just gonna take the black that's around it and use that with just a damp brush. If you painted black all the way to the eyelid, of course, there's no problem. Just mix a gray, a light gray, and put it back in. Okay, I'm going to and then one little thing that I'm missing that I just recognized is that, yes, I have a shadow underneath the eyelid in between the eye and kind of right here, but there's also kind of like a little bit of a highlight right here. So I'm just going to kind of paint that in right now, because why not? And whenever you notice like a shadow or a highlight or something that you didn't put in, you can always layer it in. That might have been too white, but I can go back and adjust it later. Okay, now this is where eyes are always tricky. I'm going to start with black, and I'm going to do the pupil. The top chunk is a glare, and the bottom chunk is actually brown. And then around it is black.
The same grandparents who had Tucker and Hoffman recently got another Labrador named Roy, and he is a unique color I've never seen before.
He's beautiful. He's like a copper color.
He's like a rare, I wish I could remember the name of it. They're like a red, right?
Yeah.
He had green eyes.
He's beautiful.
Like a light green eyes. He's very beautiful. He's crazy. He's got a lot of energy.
He does have a lot of energy. I'm going to mix dark brown by mixing yellow and red together to make orange, and then grabbing a little bit of black. And then that black kind of fades to the brown kind of fades to the black area. And if you want to do like a slight, just like gold swoop on the right hand side, just to introduce some like warmth or something to that brown color, give it a little bit of a richness, can.
The internet is calling them either red fox Labradors or ruby Labradors.
Ruby. Ruby sounds...
It was something else. I don't think I'm finding the right thing.
Not finding it?
But those are pretty. It's unreal what the eyes add to this painting.
Okay, now I'm realizing that the eyelid that I did on the top is too white. So I'm just going to do a swoop of a slightly darker value over it, because that value, the eyelid value on the top, should not be lighter than the glare value. And even that glare value, we're going to tone that down just a little bit by just doing one little swoop. Soften that white. And again, I'm just taking my time really blending these things out. I want to make sure some areas are defined without it being like, again, just chunks. That feels good.
My friends growing up in high school had a dog named Hercules, and he was part Great Dane and part Mastiff. He was giant.
Whoa.
And he would lay on the couch and take up the whole couch. And then if you managed to squeeze onto the couch, he would get up and go behind the couch and rest his head on your shoulder. That's how tall he was.
That's awesome.
Hercules.
And if your black got out of control in your eye, I mean, again, I know I've said this a million times, you can always go back in and put the color back in. Just layer it right on top. Okay. And this, the left eye is just a little bit trickier because it's at an angle. It's turning away from the face. That whole left-hand side of the dog, because it's like a 3/4 view, so we're only seeing a little bit of it, always makes it hard to render because we're dealing with perspective, we're dealing with foreshortening, like we're dealing with a bunch of different stuff that makes it like hard to see what's going on. My advice is to try not to overthink it.
My advice is to put an eye patch on him. Call him a pirate dog.
There you go.
Paint one good eye and then one eye patch.
I need to tone down those eyelids, right? See how much they're popping out?
Yeah, big time.
We got to tone those down. Just do washes over them. Especially on the edge right here.
Is this a he or a she dog?
So far, this is feeling like a boy to me.
He's cute.
He is cute. Okay, and then we got to tone down that glare. I just like to do like a swoop.
So if you just really mess that up, can you just whitewash it all with gouache, let it dry, and start over?
You could.
Okay.
Yeah. You would then have to think about like the texture underneath, right? Because as you layer more paint stuff, you might be picking up more layers of texture. That's not bad.
Or just an eye patch.
Or just eye patch it. Okay. We put in the eyes and the mouth. That's giving us a little bit more information with our dog that we're like, okay, this is a dog. Yes. But now we need to go back in and really work a little bit more on the like overall face. I'm looking at this, I can tell that it's a dog. I feel like I need to do more work though to actually communicate the form, okay? Especially right here. And I'm actually looking at that side of the face and I just feel like it needs to be a little bit darker. I feel like my values aren't fully there yet where these different planes are communicating. Does that make sense? So I'm just gonna start kind of blending. And I feel like this needs to be darker. So I'm just gonna do another darker value. And again, I'm kind of like going off of my reference photo.
End of the day, are you a dog person or a cat person?
That is really, really tricky for me to answer.
I also love both. It's hard for me.
I feel like they both have really wonderful qualities that I can appreciate them for. Like, I love the loyalty and the love that a dog has. Like, you know what I mean? They're just there. Like, they care about you, you know? And I love that about them. I also kind of love that cats, I think cats have that too, but they also have this like thing about them where they're independent and like want to do their own thing, you know? Sometimes they're indifferent. And I just find that hilarious.
Yeah.
And I really like them for that too.
Our cat is very sweet. It follows our daughters around the yard and will perch up by wherever they decide to play and like watch them like a mama cat.
Oh yeah, she'll follow them all around.
She's the sweetest.
Make sure that they're doing okay. Now I just want to give you a heads up that as we darken the right hand side of this face a little bit more, you still want to make sure that your darkest values is still like at that neck and where this ear meets the face. We can't lose that. So I'm just doing another layer of black around that. Okay.
Are cats and dogs about the same difficulty to paint?
I actually struggle with cats way more than I do with dogs.
Huh.
And I think it's because that cats, I really thought about this, like, why can't I capture cats the same way I can capture dogs? And I think it's because they don't have such a pronounced muzzle.
Nozzle.
That it trips me up. And I overwork cats. I do. I overwork cats every time. It's something I got to work on.
Have you done a lot of other animals, like birds or snakes or anything?
I love painting birds. I can do birds all day. I have painted a bunch of other animals. In terms of like when, in the good old days, when I did a million pet portraits. Some pets that I painted that were so cute. I've done pigs. I've done goats. I've done rabbits. And cats, obviously, cats and dogs.
I'm surprised no pet snakes.
No snakes.
People
What's
love
up with
their
that?
snake pets.
Yeah. Why didn't they hire me to paint their snake?
Come on, people.
Maybe I should have had an example of one. And then they would have been like, oh yeah, she could paint a snake. I don't want to paint snakes now.
Just like a stick snake, it's just a line.
Okay. Okay, that right hand side right here is starting to feel really good. That feels better to me. Now I'm going to focus really on this part. And I think I figured out what's throwing me off because this still feels flat. Would you kind of agree with that?
Are you going to hit me?
No.
Yeah, no, I kind of think so too.
Okay, I think this is what's happening is I went really opaque with the highlight here and my forehead right here is more transparent. And so the values aren't reading because I'm dealing with transparency and opacity as well as the values. So I actually have to go darker here with a more opaque paint. And I'm hoping that will solve my problem. This is me problem solving in front of you guys right now. And so don't be frustrated with me, but maybe it's good for you guys to see that like when I recognize that there's an issue within my own painting, I have to figure out what is going on.
Okay, I'm a know-nothing, so shoot this down if you don't think so.
Yeah.
But I feel like along with your using the paintbrush to contour the area spiel, I feel like the top of the muzzle, it kind of needs to like middle part and go down more, like the hair transfers down, where I feel like it just shoots back into the forehead.
So you're saying that I need to have some brush strokes that kind of do this?
Yes. Kind of like soften the top of that up a little bit.
I can see that. So they're kind of going across. And then it would be across and then it would kind of curve like this, like, because you're following that bump. I also think that this highlight that I put in here is off. So I'm just going to blend that out. Okay, now I feel like we're starting to get somewhere. It's not there yet. but it is starting to feel a bit better.
Teamwork. I contributed absolutely nothing. I'm taking credit.
Okay, and I think what I need to do is even do right here a little bit lighter value. Right at this tip. And I think it still needs to go even darker on that bridge. I'm actually going to see what it would be like if I actually lifted some of this out. Okay, now I'm feeling better. Okay. Is that starting to feel better to you too? Like
yeah.
From that top? Okay, so I lifted up some of that opacity just a little bit to help with that value. Kind of swirl down. I also feel like I need to lift up some value right here, like right on the front of this lip. Yep.
Dang. Huge difference.
Yeah. I was freaking out for a second.
It's too late to start over.
I was like, no, Sarah, it's okay. You can problem solve through this in real time in front of everybody. It's okay. And that is also where it's helpful to take a step back. Like, if I didn't have Michael here looking at this, you can ask someone if you feel comfortable of like, hey, something's going on here that's not quite right. Can you help me figure it out? If you feel comfortable doing that, which that's a scary thing to ask. So if you're not there yet, that's okay. So you can ask someone, or honestly taking a step back and looking at it for a long time will make things become more apparent to you. Like usually after I paint something, I think after even I painted this one, I hung it up on my wall in my office and just would take a peek at it when I would walk into a room and see if I needed to adjust anything. And honestly, if I took the time to do that even now with this one and like stepped away from it for a second, came back to it, all of those things, I probably would find more things to tweak. So that's kind of the benefit and the curse, right? Because you'll probably keep on seeing stuff. And then there'll become a point where you're just like, you know what it is what it is, and I'm good with it.
How do you feel about dogs with human names like ours?
I love dogs with, I actually really, I like both because I think dogs with human names are funny, but I also think random names for dogs like Pickle is also funny.
I love the name Bear for a dog.
Oh yeah, that's cute.
Pickle. That's what I call my son.
There was I love wiener dogs. I just think stubby dogs are like so cute. I can't even handle them. And I think we were out in Sacramento at like a park or something. And this person had the cutest wiener dog I've ever seen. And its name was Pickle. And I just about died. I couldn't handle it.
Do you remember that beautiful golden doodle at the ice cream place? That giant golden doodle?
Yes. I do remember that. Okay, and now I'm just kind of like tightening things up. You'll see that I'm adding just a little bit of fur texture in the ears just to show where this like velvety soft fur collects and leaves just like the slightest shadow. I'm doing a little wisps here. You can do around 2 or around 6 for this part. Little wisps. You can even do little wisps off the ear, but if you get too crazy, then that's going to make it seem like your dog's hair is crazy and not smooth. Like what we kind of got with this curling up scenario here right at the neck. So we're on the last step, you guys. If you're like, where are we? We're almost done. I'm feeling good. I'm just kind of adjusting, putting in any kind of last minute shadows and highlights. Maybe blend out some of these kind of shadows I put in. And I just feel like it just needs to be a little bit darker here. Then I'll blend that out, and then I think we're good. Just looking at this, I would say that maybe my highlight on my nose is a little bit just too bright. I'm going to tone that down. Just a touch. Okay, I'm going to take my round 2 and just kind of tighten up some of the nose a little bit. Okay, if you see any like glares that you want to put in, if you want to go in with your 2 and even do some like fur textures, kind of like what we did with our German Shepherd, if you guys have watched that one yet, you can absolutely do that. I didn't really do that with this one. Maybe just a little bit like here and there, but nothing too crazy. You just want to make sure that whatever you put in, like your values have to relate to each other, right? Because if they're off, then it's the same thing as when I was saying like, oh, that eyelid is too white. It's like popping out. You see that? So like, just whenever you put in highlights like this, you just got to make sure that they're matching the other values that you've put in already. Just see this down here. Cover up that white. We're done.
It's beautiful.
We did it. This was a hard project and a long one. You guys did awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with me. Again, if you struggled, that's okay. Learning something new is a process. It's a struggle. And honestly, you probably will not nail it every single time. I don't. But you just keep on going. And it feels really nice when it does work. And sometimes that means maybe putting something away for a bit and trying something else. You know what I mean? Because maybe you're at the stage in your journey where you're not quite ready for this, and that's okay.
I find sometimes when I'm having a hard time with something, I always compare this to guitar. When I'm having a hard time with something, I take a break from it and then do something I'm good at.
Yeah.
Feel good again.
Yes.
Get that.
Totally.
And then attack the hard thing again.
Totally. Okay, so if you want to share what you have painted, you can share in our watercolor group. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. If you're on Instagram, tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. I've also noticed that you guys have been tagging my personal account. I love that. I love seeing what you guys make, so I appreciate that. And if you need any of these supplies, you can find that at letsmakeart.com. Michael, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.